rise of the multifaceted, multi-complex system of living that people are living. Stuck in inertia, that's a diversion. Government worship, instead we are searching ancient mysteries, ancient history, sacred energy, and how to discern it. Human autonomy, truth of philosophy, UFOlogy, human psychopathy, super anomalies, human ecology, Yuga lobotomies up in your consciousness. All the thoughts that we've been dancing around. The system wants to blow your candle out, but we won't let it. We reject it with our pathetic lies, so we chant it down.
Chant It Down podcast is your gateway to your unraveling of a complex system that is grabbing hold of the lives of you and everyone you know. Come untangle from this woven web to understand this crazy world. Chant It Down with your host, Loomis.
Welcome back to Chant It Down, and this is a live stream today. Welcome. This is episode 253. ChantItDownRadio.com is the website. I'm your host, Loomis, and I'm streaming live, and I should be live on YouTube, which is Truthful Trajectory, Twitch, and for the first time, Rumble. And so, welcome everyone. Looks like just a few of you joining in, and we will take callers at the end of today's presentation. So this will be an all call-in show after that. So if you have a call in mind, or any subject, doesn't matter what it is, I will cover it today on Chant It Down. And when you do call, just kind of remember that if you have this playing in the background, it's going to come into your mic. So try to mute the live stream if you call in. And I'll remind you of that again before you call in. That way you don't get a lot of feedback. So welcome, everyone. And I hope you've been enjoying Chant It Down and the variety pack of different things that I give you guys here on the show. This is kind of a biased talk I'm giving you today, sort of a different show. I wanted to get up here on a live stream because it's been a while since I did one. And this idea for today's show just sort of came to me suddenly one night after looking at the selection, or let's say lack of selection, of good movies to watch nowadays. And I was like, wow, things are changing in that landscape, but that's just a microcosm of all the different things that are changing. And so anyway, I thought, we would go ahead and, do this show. It just sort of came to mind one night. It's like all of a sudden. So here we are, we're the 80s, the good old days. Well, I mean, most of you know the answer to that, the short answer. I mean, but I guess the 80s were better to live in. Again, still being biased, and it's easy for me to fall into nostalgia about my childhood, but you might be a different age than me and have your nostalgia for whatever time you were a kid. The good old days are different for everyone, right? Today's episode is you looking through the lens of my childhood, actually. So most of me describing it is through the lens of a child observing reality. I wasn't paying attention to geopolitics, of course, or destabilized America. However, even my kids sense could feel the world was going to be a crazy place, and starting things were ramping up. I don't know. At least in my head, it made sense. What I'm going to do is compare the times from the 80s and even the late 70s roughly to now and measure quality of life. I'm a Generation Xer, and it is interesting to note that Generation Z is the end of the alphabet. And, now we have, and what is next, or what is emerging, is Generation Alpha. And so you see the generations here, and it's just interesting to note that they start over. Like, we never had Generation A, right? But suddenly, we're at the end of this cycle. Whoever plans this stuff. Are we starting a new human 2.0 generation with the genetic experiment that just took place, gene therapy, wink, wink, yeah, because, well, I'm going to try to save my YouTube channel. Got a few strikes, and, well, we'll just keep it at that. But anyway, so, what do we start with? I was born in the late 70s. I don't really remember them at all. I was a baby, but I just remember TV being more simple, and the world wasn't in such a high gear. Of course, I was a kid, and but go back and watch things from this era, and you'll see it too. I mean, a way slower paced and less over stimulating world. It seems more quiet. Frames move slower. Things like that. And the 80s in general were a great decade all in all. I think everyone is starting to realize that. You can kind of see that. And one of the most dominating things in my early life was Star Wars. I mean, it was a phenomenon that occurred. It was a milestone movie. And when was the last time we had one of those too? That's a question. Like, when was there a movie that just like changed, like how everybody thought, and just like, oh, I want to see that again. And that's kind of what spurred this whole actual talk I'm giving today, is the simple reason that I couldn't find anything good to watch. And I know that's a kind of a shallow and weird reason to start a show about a deeper talk, but it just spurred that. So not only was the movies so popular, but I had the Star Wars. I had some of the vintage figures, and you have to realize the time period too. Toys were actually coming into a pretty cool age in those days too. See, I had some of these toys. These aren't actually mine. Mine were by the time I got to probably second grade, all banged up and not in good condition. But I wish I would have held on to them. I actually gave a lot of them away because I was not going to be interested in this anymore when I got older, and that was stupid because, well, they're they're probably worth a lot of money, and not that I would cash them in for money. It's just it's like a collector's item, but whatever. Anyway, but they those that was a fun time. You could now play with these 3-inch figures that were from one of the most influential movies of all time, and it's even still strong today, even if it sucks now totally. But you got to play that crazy lived-in universe that Star Wars was, and so it was like, and I think it was one of the first times in history where toys came out with a movie, and then you could actually relive that movie or play it your own way. Interesting, around that time, a lot of space movies had come out. I wouldn't say by accident. I mean, E.T. came out, and if you want to look at my childhood, look at how the kids in that movie were in E.T. They were actually playing with Star Wars figures, and this is a great example of what kids kind of look like back then, and me too. Just like raggedy hairstyles coming straight out of the 70s, corduroy pants, playing in the dirt, snaggletooth teeth some kids had because they couldn't get braces like nowadays, but kids playing totally emerged in their environment, and that was life then. That's what you did. And so I feel like that's disappeared a lot with kids. I mean, I see parents giving their kids an iPad when they're just little kids in strollers, just to shut them up and distract them. And that's changed society a lot, and I don't think it's in a good way either. But look at the space movies that came out in that time. Just speaking of that, you had Battlestar Galactica, Superman, the movie, the first one. I mean, it kind of did take place in the beginning in space, and it showed Superman, as a baby coming through the solar system in this Yeah, basically a Merkaba, which is what we talked about in the last episode with Trusika, and you should check his video out. Type in YouTube Trusika and Merkaba, and you should be able to find that. I found it, and so yeah. Um, anyway, it was a good it was a it was a good movie in its day too, in a way. But yeah, so that was in there. Interesting. Close Encounters of the Third Kind that came out before I was born, but there's another space themed movie. Science fiction was really big in those times. Even James Bond had Moonraker, right? And we've talked about James Bond on this show, and I assume there was some programming there with space. You got to think of the time period. We were coming off the backs of the alleged moon landing era, and trying to convince everyone that NASA is the main space program. Meanwhile, the secret one was the real one, I think, and that's what I think. And of course, that's a whole can of worms. We're not going to get into that on this show, but especially when we get into the space is fake narrative. If you want to hear more on that, don't hesitate to go back to episode 206 I did with David Whitehead and Josh Reed and Triffin from Unlocking the Code. That's a great look into that actual subject, and I believe that if you want some real solid evidence between the four of us, I think we brought it pretty good. Don't be afraid to look into the archives of this show. Just because it's an old show doesn't mean it's not relevant today. Almost everything that comes all the way back to 2013 on this show is still something you can listen to today. So good stuff. Anyway, I'm kind of digressing at every turn here. But anyway, interesting to note that the space theme, a simple, just I don't know. There's one way to look at it, like a non-conspiratorial way is it was making money and people love the theme, and they bought seats in the movie theater, and they made a lot of money. But we do know how the culture creators work. We do know how that is. But I just remember so much good things to get into when I was a kid. The 80s were just a time when everything was fresh still. Everything had originality. And, and music was great even then too. Breakdancing and electro music was big in my life. And the first hip hop song that I ever heard it was let's see, sorry, let me just do this thing here. This song right here. Check this out. Going down with the rock rolls out on time. In your mind, see, you gotta put the key of best ability. You gotta funk it up until they knock you down. And when you're open up, and show you pass it around. Come on, let's go to work. We got what'll make your body jerk. Make you throw your hands up in the air, shake your booty and scream, oh yeah, 'cause we are the jam on you and jamming on this is how we do the do. We'll funk you up until you put it down. So come on, people, check out the sound. Check out the sound, check out the sound, check out the sound. So anyway, yeah, so that was that was like one of the first hip hop songs I ever heard, and I remember trying to break dance too, and things were fresh, things were fun, and it was a good time to definitely be alive. I mean, punk rock was big. That's when punk rock had its real heart and soul right then, and even hip hop was real basic but real. And it got really cool by like the late 80s, and in what many consider the golden era of hip hop. We've talked about before on the show. I mean, so there's the 80s versus 90s golden era hip hop even, and what I would say is different is in the 80s rappers were having fun. Rappers smile on their album covers, and then in the 90s everyone was so much more gangster and everything was like, everybody's hard and yeah, so the 80s were a happier time overall. I mean, I'll come back to that, but like mostly they were. And metal got good with Metallica and a few other bands. That's when metal was like really coming out, and then there was things like butt rock. The height of that era was around, although I never dug it too much. But you had Bon Jovi. Like, you could probably put Kiss in there and Def Leppard and all that stuff. But that was big then too. And I mean, I love to play for you like a mix like a DJ on this show, but you got to deal with copyright, but stuff like that. But even pop music was good. Michael Jackson, I mean, it was good comparatively, at least, right? Cyndi Lauper, Prince, even Madonna had some good first songs, and don't get me wrong, there was a lot of shitty music too. I mean, that gets forgotten with every time period, but you could say there's more shitty music per capita now than back then. I would say so. But the 80s were cheesy at times too. I mean, you had just some crazy, ridiculous, styles that were, I mean, now we laugh at it, right? But back then that was considered cool. People look, pretty ridiculous at times, and we're like, whoa, what were they thinking back then? But it was a new time, and I guess it looked cool in its day, right? The styles were pretty corny though, and you got to say there was a lot of cheesy and corny stuff from the 80s as well. Atari came out. Atari was the huge thing. I never owned an Atari system, but I went to my neighbor's house and they had it, and I played that thing for hours until basically their parents kicked me out. It's time for dinner. So yeah, but I loved it. It was fun, and yeah, very basic. But sometimes maybe if these basic games weren't so overtaking on the brain than what you have nowadays. I don't know. I think so, but they were pretty much the first system for any household, and that was a big deal. And then Walkmans came out. I mean, half of my life has been in a Walkman. Still today. I mean, I don't use a Walkman, unfortunately. I use an iPod or my phone. But Walkmans have always, like, I've always been in there. That's how I got inspired, is listening to music, But yeah, the 80s were great, in a lot of ways. Ideas were so fresh. Think of all the movies around this time. Movies were huge. It was the extra thing everyone was into too, is movies. Movies were big. Like, it was, no matter who you were, movies were like what you talked about. And again, that's how this whole thing started here. This whole episode is I was looking for something good to watch and found nothing. And nowadays, I think too, people are on YouTube and they're on social media and video games, chewing up everyone's attention. Back then, movies were the only thing that you really had, or a TV show, right? And I remember we were too poor to get a VCR, so we would rent the VCR and a movie from the video store. I mean, imagine that. And it was, I think it was expensive at the time even to do that, but but the movies were so original. I mean, they're still getting recognition today from this time period, right? How many 80s spin-offs are there now? How many 80s throwbacks, and how many can't pull it off? Yeah, nearly all of them, right? And why? It's because the 80s were a time and a place, and you can't bring back that, really, but I already named some movies from this era, like E.T. and Star Wars and stuff. But a lot of things came out, like Indiana Jones. Yeah, these slides. I forgot to adjust some of these slides, so it is what it is. But you see what Indiana Jones, Back to the Future. I mean, all three movies were basically pretty good. I mean, the third one I felt like kind of lacked, but still, it's good. And The Never Ending Story. I mean, you could throw Labyrinth in there, although I didn't like that as much, but still, like this kind of genre of movies. Uh, I don't know. It was pretty good in its time. Rocky. I mean, the Rockies came from the '70s. This is still, I would still consider it the same period. At least the first three Rockies are pretty good. After that, I felt like they fell off. But this was an era. Rocky 3 was still decent. Ghostbusters, I mean, that was a major hit in the 80s, Uh, Terminator is an awesome and foretelling future movie. I would say, especially, both Terminator 1 and 2. That's where it ends too, by the way. After that, those movies are terrible. The first two were good. This first one was more like a horror movie, and it definitely encapsulates the 80s really well. Another Schwarzenegger movie, Predator. I mean, Predator was actually a really good, almost like a crime thriller. Yeah, it was a little cheesy, and of course they had Arnold pose, with a gun purposely to show off his biceps. But the 80s were cheesy too. But anyway, it was actually Predator was a decent movie. Karate Kid, the first one, was actually a really good movie, and surprisingly, the spin-off show is one of the actual 80s spin-off shows that sort of works. Cobra Kai. It's actually better than the sequels of Karate Kid. Friday the 13th. Now, I wouldn't consider this to be a great movie, these ones here, or Freddy, but they had an originality to them. They're not necessarily good movies, but there's something about those from that era, and cheesy, yes, and stupid, but at the same time, I mean, characters like that don't come out anymore. Gremlins was decent, the first one. It's actually a Christmas movie, isn't it? Flight of the Navigator. I haven't seen that since I was a kid, but I remember it being good and original. And I imagine it may hold up. I really don't know. Even The Princess Bride was really good. It was actually an entertaining movie. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Romancing the Stone, decent movie. Beverly Hills Cop. Crocodile Dundee, right? These were all fun movies to watch. Fun is the correct word, and I would throw in Blade Runner. It's the originality of that movie is amazing, and even the TV shows are really good too. I mean, the TV shows were actually pretty decent back then. I didn't grow up watching a lot of TV, but Chips, even though, I mean, they're promoting you to be a cop and everything, but it was fun at the time, right? I watched, Cheers was actually a good show. It went on for many seasons. Full House, actually a good show, to watch. I mean, Dukes of Hazzard, right? That was original. Probably considered racist these days. I don't know. Where's the other slide there? It skipped the slide. Why is it doing that? Come on, slides. Hold on a second here. Try it again. There we go. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. All right. MASH. I never really watched it, but I think it was actually a decent show. And Knight Rider was good. A lot of good stuff. Yeah. So there was a lot of good shows in this time period. Yeah, and I just showed a picture of a G.I. Joe figure. Well, this was a time in my life too, and there's a lot of programming here. But and so the line of toys then was awesome too. Like, there's a lot of cool toys. I graduated from playing Star Wars to G.I. Joe because, well, the figures are way more flexible. They had all these accessories. It was really cool, and I even watched the TV show and collected their toys and shoplifted them. I think I shoplifted like an entire season of G.I. Joes. My parents were too poor to, give much allowance, and I just, decided to do it. I learned my lesson though, but it was what I did. Got really weird one season though. So the toy line, like, they got really weird. We found out as you go through them that Cobra was controlled by an actual reptilian-like beings. And it went from like individualized figures with cool accessories, and you could read about their backgrounds, and these characters were cool, to gene splicing a new leader out of DNA, and then later uh, finding out that Cobra, the bad guys, were controlled by a reptilian alien species living inside the Himalayas. It went for a really strange turn as I went through those toys. It went into this. I'm like, what the hell? Like crazy, like alien, weird reptilian, whatever the hell it was. It was really interesting. And I've talked about this on the show before, but seeing or hearing it is better. So I'm going to just show you a clip from an animated movie called G.I. Joe the movie in 1987. This is their history of this race of alien beings, and check it out. Put the full screen on there. Yeah. Oh, we got to get the done. Okay. Reclaim the Earth. All right. So eh, that was one part of the movie. And then here I'm going to show you another clip that definitely, I mean, talking about like just match that description with our ancient history and see where they're trying to come from there, which is a possibility. But this is talking about this energy device, like a free energy device here. Check it out. Oh, shit. All right. Anyway, hope you guys saw that. Did it work? Well, I hope so. Anyway, uh, so yeah, there that was an energy device like HARP. Basically, puts out this energy into the upper atmosphere, and causes like it to go up, and who knows exactly, but it's basically like a miniature harp, and they're talking about it. So I feel like there's some insight here into these cartoons or some programming, one of the two. All right, but anyway, back to the everything else. I mean, the programs for kids were good all over. I mean, to get into as a kid, you had GoBots and Thundercats and Ninja Turtles and Transformers. I mean, they were cool toys, but I was always too poor to get them. They're always expensive. Legos came out. Legos are way cool. And then of course, Legos kind of went. Everybody could play Legos, girls, boys. But then girls had Barbie, of course, but also had My Little Pony, Cabbage Patch Kids, Care Bears, Gem. There was a lot of stuff that came out that time. There was so much original shows, cartoons, and a vast universe of for an 80s kid to be lost in. Even comic books were cool and not as dark as I felt. And one thing that was an interesting, cool thing about the 80s was kids weren't pussies. Kids were dicks too. The 80s bully was a real species. The 80s bully was not just portrayed in movies, it was a real thing. Like there were some just, I don't know what, but kids that just came out and they were dicks. It was impossible to go down a hall without having somebody flip up your hat bill and and knocking your hat off your head. And this later led to 90s violent kids. So it kind of went along that stretch. And I like that, but I like to take that non-pussy approach to today's world. It's like it's good. It's a trait that an unafraid trait that is definitely lost in our history. Nintendo came out, Mario, that was a big deal, right? The original Nintendo, it came out. Mario was huge, and before games swiveled all over the place and made you dizzy, you just had straightforward games, and it was just kind of, it was fun. And I would, if someone had one at their house, I would still play it today. Those are fun games that I can still get into because, yeah, I'm old school now. MTV came out. MTV, manipulation television, right? That's what we call it on this show. And well, it was the start of something really bad, right? It was, but it started out pretty cool. And of course, that's how they get you. They get you. It started, but there's also VH1 back then too. But yeah, there was straight videos, music videos, which made it fun to watch. And I don't even know what it is. It's like a reality TV slot now, and it's terrible. And there, one thing that came out later too, being that I'm into hip hop, there was Yo MTV Raps. That was really good. And yeah, that bleeds into the 90s, and the 90s were really awesome too. And I've had an entire show on the 90s in case you missed it. Episode 120, the 90s destabilization agenda, talking about this progression of destabilization, even though the 90s were a really awesome generation too, or decade, but there's the roots of some bad things were planted even in the 80s from there. So yeah, when I compare the 80s to now, I see a loss of the fun parts of civilization. And of course, you could say everything I just listed off is a distraction. And ultimately, it is. I mean, movies, music, toys, video games. I mean, bread and circus of modern day, for sure. But what was cool, the culture was alive and well in those days, which gave a more fulfilled world to dive into. And I've mainly been talking about entertainment, the arts and culture. But that's what makes the arts and culture make a place cool, right? So the fun parts of civilization are things still around, but not like the 80s. I mean, things like record stores, you know, uh, even physical media stuff, bookstores, things that actually were cool. And there was a sense that life was good back then. I mean, of course, I was a kid, but still, it just seemed like that there's no end of this right away anyway. But besides nostalgia, I think there was a simplicity to those times that is lacking in today's world. And I'm seeing it through, yeah, I'm looking through rose tinted glasses because it's my childhood, it's nostalgia. But what it also is a golden era of our civilization. Civilizations, they have their, they have their their modes, their stages, you could say, and as, like, I mean, they have prime, you have your beginning times, and often rough, right? And then you have your prime times, and then you have your rotting stages. And as far as America goes, you might say that post World War II till maybe 2010 or so, or cut off it at the 90s if you like, was maybe that stage. And or you might even say that the 20s, 30s, and 40s were pretty good too. I mean, none of us probably watching are alive for that. Maybe some of you are, I don't know. at least mainly for Western white people, right? But we have the internet now, and don't get me wrong, there's great, awesome things with having it, but I could also name a list that pretty much kind of tips the scales, right? Or the same, often tipping the scales toward the bad side, even. I could, it's truly a double-edged sword, the internet. It's good, it's bad, it's a mix of things. The 80s weren't all great either. I mean, we have modern conveniences now that at times are really handy, for sure. I mean, one thing that was, definitely a hindrance was payphones. I mean, you know, like, uh, trying to make a phone call, get a hold of somebody, things were tough before cell phones as far as getting a hold of someone. I'm not a big promoter of phones because I think they give us cancer and radiation and all kinds of, nasty crap. But um, I mean, payphones. You had to, if you try to call someone, you had to, you know, make put in the quarter or however much it ended up being, and then maybe you get someone's answering machine. But yeah, you got phone books, and people tore the pages out, and it got nasty in those phone booths too. People would throw up in them, and it was dirty, right? Sometimes you'd have to wait for someone to get off the phone. You'd have to be in a long line waiting to get on a payphone too. And if you live in Hawaii and you're listening, remember the phone books? Remember our phone books? Every island was small except for Oahu's. Oahu's was like, it was like this big. It was just this massive phone book, and I used ours as a booster seat for my first child. It was like a foot wide. It just shows the population imbalance out here. We got Oahu with over 1 million, and then we got the next biggest, the next population, I think, is Big Island, about 200,000. But yeah. Anyway, the world before the internet was more imaginative and real, and you know, you actually went to rent movies at video stores, right? Remember that? Remember video stores. You maybe you don't. Maybe you're not old enough for that, but but like going into these places, um, it was kind of fun. Like you would search for the movie physically, and read the back and say, nah, that doesn't sound very good. And it was if I was able to time travel, I'd open up a video store in 1980 and put a lot of stock in it because they were everywhere. I remember there was a spot where there was like one on three corners. It was just insane, like how many video stores were. It was cool because you would meet people when at the video store. You might even meet your next date. Although I was a little too young for that. But like just saying, like it you well later in the 90s, yeah. But you could be like, hey, have you seen that movie? Oh, hey, want to come to my place? I got a cool home theater. And home theaters were a big deal. Like, if you could afford to have a home theater and like, have that sound, and probably the sound sucks compared to now, but it was good back then, right? And you didn't know any better because even if the picture quality was a VHS, it still was it was we didn't know any better, right? And that was like cool points back then. That was a marketable thing. And then you had physical media too. Physical media is really in a bad place right now. I mean, physical media was the thing too. You had tapes, cassette tapes or VHS, CDs, DVDs, and that bled into the 90s and even early 2000s. I learned this year is the last year selling DVDs in many stores, and I think like Best Buy is cutting their line of DVDs, and Netflix quit mailing DVDs out finally. Like this year is the last year they're going to do that mail-in service, and that's how Netflix started, if you remember. So this isn't good to me. I personally don't like this, and I think a lot of people are starting to see this, but we're losing ownership of physical media into the hands of everything on the internet, everything in there. And although that might seem like a pretty small issue in today's world, and yeah, I mean, it is, but at the same time, you don't own anything anymore. And these streaming services have taken over everything, and they suck. And I'll talk more on that in a little bit. But, there was some cool things back then. And, you know, I think that's one thing that this world is going to regret giving up is everything online, especially if the internet goes down. Like, seriously, I've talked about that before on this show. Like, it could go down purposely on purpose. These controllers have these plans in mind, probably smoking in restaurants. You could smoke everywhere. I mean, you know, in the 80's, in through some of the 90's, you could pretty much guarantee go anywhere and smoke. I mean, people even smoked on planes in the 80's, you know. And I even miss cigarette smoke. I know that's weird. I don't smoke cigarettes, but I miss when the world wasn't so controlled and didn't have such a stick up their asses, you know. And you know, when I go to Europe, I actually like seeing people sit down at outdoor restrooms and smoke. It's some, I don't know what it is. It just brings something back for me, and I kind of like it. I mean, I don't miss smoky bars and just sitting there inhaling smoke, but you know, um, it has a sort of nostalgia for me. But not just looking at the 80's, look at the gradual declines elsewhere for a second. Just, you know, pull out of the 80's for a second and just think like, um, I would say the internet itself has been moving out of its golden age. You know, the internet was actually kind of dumb at first, right? And then it got cooler. We got YouTube. And remember when you could like see anything on there, conspiratorial or whatever, and download it? You know, uh, those were better days. And I mean, props to anyone who makes their living off of YouTube. I think that is a plus of our modern age right now. But however, YouTube is an evil platform. Did you hear that, YouTube? You are. You censor. So you're evil. You know, give me a strike. I don't care. Even computers were better too. Like, you know, in the early 2000s, computers were better. I have this Mac G4, and look at all the plugins on that side. Well, there was an additional bunch of plugins on the other side. So you could pretty much hook that thing up to anything you needed. And it was very convenient to do that because now Macs don't have any plugins hardly at all. I mean, I don't even think they have a headphone jack on the Mac computers anymore. I mean, it's not it's just getting to a point where they're shaping our reality because they're not allowing us to do these things anymore. Back then it was cool, you know? I mean, back then Mac was actually a fun company, you know. It was actually fun. You could do everything with it. You know, it was a workhorse computer. So that's kind of why I say that Western civilization's golden age stretches into 2010, maybe. Or you could even say that the teen years were the tail end. I mean, it just depends. Just depends on your view, I guess. But I had great, wonderful times up to 2020, and I still have, you know, great times. But I see a world in this steady decline, and I noticed a decline around 2016, and since things of all sorts seem to be getting worse. Name it: censorship, division, woke movies, whatever. You know, it's all around 2016. It just took this turn. And I know that I'm coming from my, you know, good old days, right? And my parents' age probably had their good old days, you know, and thought that the 80's were shit compared to their era, right? And every generation has multiplied its amount of here. This is important though. Like, so every generation has multiplied its amount of dysfunctional, debased, debauched people every 10 years. Like, it's just gotten worse and worse, ratcheted worse. And you know, even your Uri Bezmenov, the ex-KGB agent who spoke in the 80's to G. Edward Griffin on, you know, he said in 1984, America was already destabilized, and it was bad, you know. And the thing is like the 80's sound good and they were good, but you can list some bad things too. Crime was actually worse in the 80's and 90's, believe it or not. Like the living conditions in some places. I'll show you. Let's see. Yes, share screen. Check this out here. Yes, share that screen there. Okay, so yeah, look at the South Bronx in the night. I mean, this is like a war zone. Like seriously, like this was like Berlin after World War II. So just to give you anyway, um, yeah. So what were we talking about? So yeah, you know, and at least as far as like what the hell? Why is that doing that? Hold on, technical difficulties here. There. Okay. So yeah, if you saw that, that's pretty bad, right? But as far as like, you know, in the 80's, like some of the bigger cities in America at least were actually more dangerous. Like New York was really bad, as like it showed you, and LA was really bad. Cocaine flooded the rich Hollywood people and was a popular drug. The poor got crack, you know. And at least in America and probably the UK too, maybe not as bad, but those places, you know, got hit by this then, and that is the destabilization agenda at work. But these days, compared to the 80's, there's a lot worse things, you know, really. I mean, there's been a big plummet of morality. I mean, moral relativism isn't at an all-time high, and so is self-preservation and vanity, just pure boasting on social media. I mean, you know, the world's never looked so dumb. I mean, people look at this guy, dumb, you know, hey, cool guy. I want to be like cool guy or her, you know, just it's all about me. And then a whole gallery of selfies, you know, of people just, you know, look at me, look at me, look at me, you know. So that's what the world's got into, you know. It's taken a plummet, you know. Um, yeah, just selfies everywhere. And I blame social media for a lot of the problems of society now. There's been a big plummet, I think, in consciousness in general, mainly because everyone is distracted by their phones and the internet, and, you know, just they're on too many things all the time. And there's a big lack of awareness, and there is a lack of simplicity. I mean, um, I'm sure, you know, if you're old enough to remember, do you remember the first time you saw someone totally in phone zombie mode and thought it was weird and thought it was stupid? You know, like just someone totally just scrolling in their phone and just like, you just like, at one time that didn't look good. Now most people don't even think twice. And I mean, and what people have been weary about back in the 80's, they accept without question now. You know, they accept things without question. I mean, look, you know, people don't care that they're being watched by all their devices. They don't care that they don't care anymore. Like, you know, oh, I don't have anything to hide. Yeah, but what about privacy? What about, I don't know, just, you know, autonomy? Yeah, people are the dumbest they've ever been. People are triggered by absolute bullshit. Um, you know, I mean, there, there you go. Right, look at that. So yeah, yeah, Henry's in the chat. What's up? What's up, Henry? All right, cool. Got some people in the chat. Feel free to chat away, guys. Soon enough, I'll be taking phone calls. Maybe I can get a few variety of phone calls today in a little bit here. But yeah, people like, you know, 90% effective, 90% survive. Yeah, it's very effective. You should see what it's doing. Check out the episode I did with Sean McCann. Shout out to Sean and William Ramsey and Hans Utter. Shout out to those guys. We did a revisit of the one we did a year ago about the you know what. Trying to stay on YouTube, guys. So anyway, I don't know, but yeah, creativity has plummeted far down. Look at all the originality in the 1980's. That fun world that I enjoyed being a kid in. The whole concept of movies is going down. I mean, they don't make anything good anymore, like I said, and it's full of propaganda, inserted woke bullshit, and you can't even find some movies anymore. They're not on streaming. They hardly make DVDs anymore, and physical media is a thing of the past. So, things are getting lost in the shuffle. You can't find everything on one stream. So what? You got to like you got to like subscribe to like 5 streaming channels to get everything you want. That's and then if you own this media, you don't have to even like subscribe to anything. Of course, you can't watch the same movie 100 times, but classics are classics, and movie theaters used to be a great experience, and they're failing now. I mean, there's never anything I really want to see anymore, and I would blame large movie franchises such as Marvel, Star Wars, all these things that had benefits of sequels, and the producers put all their money into that stuff for killing just regular movies, that were cool. And then the other one I blame on this whole physical media disappearance and all this is Netflix. Netflix, it killed it. Netflix killed it all, and they suck too. They're totally woke and totally dumb. But yeah, and creativity is missing from music too. I got to enjoy the golden era of hip hop, and I think it really took a nosedive, let's just say around 1996. So that pocket between the late 80s and about 96 was just brilliant, right? Hip hop was super creative and imaginative back then, and that's not counting other great music from the 80s and 90s. I'm just zoning in on what I was part of my experience. But now everything is just a blend of uncreative recycled sounds. It's just, yeah, it's not very appealing. And someone might say to that, well, we've done everything. There's no new types of music, and every movie idea has been made, and blah 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 blah. But I felt like that too. I've thought that same way, but I don't know. With the vastness of our universe and our interverse, I think people can come up with more golden era material, but our consciousness level has gone down. Our attention spans are shorter. No thanks to social media, and basically because we don't exercise our creativity muscles, they have atrophied, and that's the thing, is a lot of people just aren't very creative anymore because and also the competition's not as high, right? Because people just like are settling for average. Uh, but yeah, um, real blunt talk. Hell yeah. Thank you, Henry. Got a few people in the chat. Great, guys. Thanks for all being there. And yeah, streaming on YouTube, Rumble, and Twitch. So anyone wants to join in, well, yeah, join in. In a little bit, we'll do the calls. But yeah, my very least favorite thing about today's world is lack of autonomy, and just a lack of like true freedom. It's just gotten worse. I copied this from a blog, and it was like a list saying, why the 80s were better. And this is just a simple thing here, but like this totally reminds me of it. Sometimes we left the house in the morning and didn't return until dinner. We talked to the we walked to the drugstore with our friends. We earned money walking the neighbors' dogs. We formed clubs with ridiculous names and unknown purposes. We explored. We were wild. People are not like that anymore. I mean, leaving the house all day long, not on technology or anything like that, And the thing I don't like about these days too is just the fact that uh, we are surveyed everywhere. We're more surveilled than ever. There's more rules than ever, and people are pussies now. That's and the more we get all these different ways to communicate, I've noticed this. Like we can communicate 100 different ways now, probably. Just all kinds of different ways with all these devices, computers, and we end up having a crappier conversation and less ways. Like people are too distracted. Like honestly, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying we have to go back to payphones and answering machines, but I'm just saying like it's weird how we have all these ways to communicate, yet no one's communicating very well. and we end up having a shittier communication with, AI and an automated world. You want to wait, do you want to go to someone's website and read all the fine details just to find out an answer, because that's all they're going to tell you when you call anymore? No more call centers hardly, and if it is, it's in some other part of the world you can't understand. I don't even like having a phone, but and the world has definitely taken a big plummet as far as, since 9/11. Yep. Oh yeah, what's up? Hey guys in the chat, Alexander. Payphones would be great. Yeah, what's my favorite movie from the 80s? That is a tough one to narrow down. I mean, I like I say, I grew up when I was little. Star Wars, those are, the first three are, you know, near and dear to my heart. I can't say they're my very favorite movies, but yeah, there's a lot of movies that I like. The whole list I did at the beginning, and if you missed it, all those are awesome movies, and there's more that I probably just forgotten. But I mean, some of these movies are just, golden. Back to the Futures. Yeah, I don't know. I can't narrow it down to one movie. That's a tough one. But yeah, so getting, TSA, at 9/11, it really got, it just, you know, traveling is harder, and COVID showed us what little freedoms we have and how utterly, compliantly stupid people are these days. So you can see why I'm illustrating this message to you, not because I just want to complain, but there are genuine things to observe here. The downturn of a lot of things, and I'm sure there is a growing grumpy old man inside me that craves those old days when things were more simpler and everything. And if we're really, I mean, so it, but at the same time, everybody can see it, no matter what age you are, right? And if we're really sloping into a bad stage of society, could we all stop it and turn it around? Can we get innocence and simplicity back? I don't know. And if we turned around society, how would the elites handle that? Like, how would they be able to try to U-turn? That'd be interesting if we could change society, or this direction, even beyond the society programmers. I mean, is it, and is it beyond the culture creators? Is it, this is where we're destined to go? It's just this direction. Maybe on one level it certainly is. And I think the info on today's shows can be connected to my episode this year I call Incremental Ghettofied, where I go deep into that. This is a very surface level talk today, just kind of comparing the times of the 80s to now, and just kind of seeing the different things, out there that are happening. I think it might being allowed to happen. This is the direction that it was always meant to go, perhaps. I'm talking about on more of like a cosmic and spiritual level. Who knows? Or is it what happens when you remove important elements of society that glue together humanity, like such as humility, morality, creativity, inspiration, and all these different things? It's kind of like when you pull the rug out from somebody, or what's that game? Jenga, where they pull out the supports and everything falls. So when you pull those things out of society, they're not as good anymore. And what we see today in our society is not great too. I mean, we have, people messing and tinkering with our DNA. I think it's when people have committed abominations on nature, such as DNA damage, gene therapy, messing with the human genome, messing with the weather, the animals, people playing God, that kind of stuff. All this is just this is what happens at the end of civilizations, and it's not going to have a good outcome, and it's interesting where things are going, and definitely it's not my imagination. But don't get depressed, still have fun, but remember what time we're living in. It's just where we're at in history. I mean, 3 years ago was absolute madness. Don't forget, the world can change like that. And it's like, now we've gotten our freedoms back and things are better. Yeah, but just be aware that we're living in those times and enjoy the good things too. I'm happy to do this show. I mean, I couldn't even do this format on a show 7 years ago, whenever they started doing live stream programs. And if this was the 80s or 90s, I would have to be in a radio station somewhere, and good luck, getting in one of those places back then. It's not like they just let everybody do a show. The era of podcasts is cool. I mean, even though it is oversaturated, there's so many different, podcasts. You just hard to even find like some of the really cool stuff out there, but still, it is definitely a cool era in regards to that. But I did notice a major drop. I really did notice a major, uh, you know, drop of. I noticed the drop in things as soon as the turn of the century. Basically, I when 2000 hit, I think the late 90s even felt like a little dried up in creativity, but not totally. But once we had this, things really took a turn, and so we are in the century of psyops since 2000, 2001, as I like to call it. And there's been very little wins for humanity since then, unfortunately. So things have taken that gradual downturn. And well, 9/11 was the big one. The pre-internet world was not a bad thing, though. It wasn't. I mean, I think we lost a lot from that period that's never really talked about. We gained a lot, but we lost a lot. And you could say the internet was out in the 90s, but that internet hadn't captivated the world till around 2000, really. And and was it a really good trade-off? That's a question too. Like to have everybody online, you know, and I don't know, but let's just remember who created the internet. DARPA. Who created social media? Well, let's see, the CIA under In-Q-Tel, the financial arm of the CIA, which had something earlier than Facebook that was called like Logbook, or I forget the name. And they no one wanted to join it because they didn't look very fun, or it's like giving up your freedom. So they made something much more well, I think they made MySpace, and then they made Facebook, and who created Google? The NSA, and I think maybe the CIA too, but I think NSA. So, just remember, they wanted everyone to have these phones. They're dual use technologies. And since 2000, we've entered more of their world. And of course, it's there to look innocent. I mean, you wouldn't just jump into the arms of Adolf Hitler for a bedtime story, would you? But unless he's dressed up like Santa Claus. So, that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't say that I haven't had an awesome time using the internet, but it has created a culture of people looking downward. And just remember that it's their technology we're playing with, and that we have all fallen more under their spell by being part of the world that they provided. And that's just important to remember. We're in the middle of an open hand, and you can see the fingers just slowly, closing in. And so, yeah, in the darkest view, the controllers help give and craft a thriving culture and golden age to get everyone addicted to the arts, entertainment, and culture. And then they Pied Piper them into the internet, their world, and that's probably the darkest view. And it may not actually be that controlled the whole journey of the way, but definitely we were carefully guided into their technology, let's just say. And just ask Claude Anal Swab where all of this is heading. You can ask him, and he'll give you the full journey of where they want to take everyone. So, yeah. Were the 80s the good old days? Well, I compared to now, I would say yes. Not just because of my nostalgia, but just because of the overall quality of life was more wholesome in some way. The culture was in the golden age, and it progressively been getting worse, but it was still great, right? And of course, if you spoke to people of different times. I mean, if you spoke to native peoples around 1900, they would have told you the days before colonization and industrialization was the good old days. But it was a great childhood for me, the 80s. And it was a great time to be a kid. And if you're not from that era, you can still see why it was fun, And the real thing to see in all this, of all this, is the fact that this world is being pushed in a certain direction, right? And no matter who you talk to, whatever belief system or political bias or whatever, it's not going anywhere good. And if you think it is, you must be misinformed, unfortunately. It's, every single movie about the future is dystopian. It's not great. It doesn't have to be, though. Could humanity return the world into a golden age? Could masses upon masses wake up and turn this ship around? Well, we yet to see that, but planet Earth needs a change of heart. It's a spiritual thing. It's actually that. So, but anything's possible when you use your heart with will and intent. So, you never know. But the '80s were a good decade for me. I enjoyed the '80s a lot, and I'm glad to have experienced that decade. And you still can through these modes as much as possible. But it's a time and a place that unfortunately probably won't come back. What's my thoughts on uh, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu? Well, I think he's part of the club. I think that they allowed Hamas to attack. In fact, somehow the security. It's always when the security stands down, right? 9/11 was that way. Many mass shootings and events are that way, where suddenly something doesn't work. And I just don't see. I think it was allowed to happen. It may even been more of a maybe a special ops or intelligence operation. It probably was. But yeah, I think Netanyahu is with them, and he's definitely on the global agenda. He made everybody get the arms spear in Israel. Israel was like the most arms speared, if you know what I mean. Let's take some callers. So I'm going to throw out the call-in number, and hopefully this works. This setup's always a little bit strange, and you might hear my voice change a little bit here with this situation. Yep, going to sound a little more robotic. But I'm going to throw out the call-in number. Let's see if we can get some calls on today's show. There it is at the bottom, 1-937-783-7259. And I hope this all works on the live stream. It's always a scary thing when it's live and it, messes up. We'll see what happens. But yeah, here we go. Anyone who would like to call, please call in. I had at one time quite a few. I must have scared some people off. Wow. But yeah, just remember when you're on if you call in, turn down the show in the background. Otherwise, it goes in the mic and it sounds really distorted. So yeah, give it a call. We'll see what emerges out of these calls today. Oh, I got an incoming call. Caller from 541 area code. You're on. Chant it down. Henry, what's up?
Hold on, I gotta tell my friend to turn off his music real quick.
I don't hear it, so it sounds good.
He's playing Drake. It's terrible music.
Oh yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, don't listen to that garbage. How you doing, Luma?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Dude, I'm doing excellent, man. Dude, I'm here. And I'm in the car with Alex Carmack. He was the one who was listening to Drake, though.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, what's up, Alex? Well, I think Drake had a few good songs. I really never got into him much, but I don't like the guy. That's all. Yeah.
I think he's like a Satanist.
It probably is.
He has a heart in his hair. It's kind of gay. He's also Jewish.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's Jewish. Ask him what he thinks about like Palestine. I think that's why he got into the rap game so easily.
Oh yeah, yeah. He probably has ties. Everybody that's big up there usually either sold their soul or they have some ties to, something.
Exactly. So ask him, Mr. Loomis, wouldn't you say that like the fabrication of like the Palestinian war, like, do you think that's all bullcrap? Because honestly, for one, both sides suck, and two, like, how much of it is real? Like, what is your opinion?
Yeah, it's a good question. How much of it's real? I would say it is being destroyed. Palestine is being destroyed. But I don't think those people are Hamas. I think they're just people that live there. That's all, you know. But they, I think I think that they, I think that it's a fabricated war from the beginning. They admitted that the babies weren't really being killed, and things have been admitted. And just to have that security stand down on that one day when it's supposed to be some of the most secure places in the world, I found that to be suspicious. So I think some of it might not be real, but I think most of it is just a staged war, like many of them are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good, Lucas.
Yeah, I would just look into the fact that they let people attack, and why would they do that? Everything we've seen in our lives that's been fabricated is usually where some security doesn't work somewhere, or it's all suspicious. It's like something doesn't work as it's supposed to. So that's the biggest red flag in that to me.
Loomis, since we're talking about 80s here, I've been into some 80s hip hop recently. But do you like De La Soul?
Yeah, yeah, I do. Yeah,
Do you like Public Enemy?
is a song.
Public Enemy.
Oh, Public Enemy. Oh yeah, Public Enemy. Yeah, I do. Definitely.
Yeah. And then do you like Beastie Boys, Paul Boutique?
Yeah. Yep, that's their best album in my opinion. That one and Check Your Head are probably actually their first one too is really good. Yeah, I mean it has some classics on there. That's when hip hop was really fun. It was in the fun era before it hit the '90s, where it was a little more darker, but still good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you don't Slick Rick?
Yep, I do. He's the storyteller.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. He's good.
Yep.
Dude, yeah, no, it's sick, dude. I love Public Enemy. I think Alex likes them too, dude. Yeah, Public Enemy's great. They did a good song with Anthrax.
Oh yeah. What's your favorite album that you've listened to with Public Enemy?
From Public Enemy, probably It Takes a Nation a Million to hold us back.
Yeah, that's probably their best. Yep.
You have the CD?
Not anymore. I used to. Yeah.
Oh man, that'd be cool if you still did.
Let's see. Yeah, I don't have any of their. I used to have tapes of their stuff. Like I had Fear of a Black Planet on tape, and the one after that I forget what it was called offhand, but I had a few of those. Yeah. Yep. Good times. They had Professor Griff at one time, and they kicked him out of the group, and he's actually the biggest true speaker of all of them.
Yeah. 100%.
Yep.
I think Ice Cube had some good things.
Ice Cube's early days were great. Yeah. Kill It Will. Yeah. I mean, his beginning stuff was good. Yep. He had some good bars. I don't think he was a real rapper. Like Ice Cube was like a real lyricist, where I think Eazy-E picked it up, but he wasn't as good as Ice Cube.
Yeah, Ice Cube was a true lyricist.
He was.
His voice sounds good on almost anything. Doing rappers sucks.
Who does?
Is Eminem.
You don't like Eminem?
I do not like Eminem.
I don't either. I never did, but I know he's a good rapper. Like I know he's good at what he does, but I never liked him. Yeah.
But he's not like an artist. He doesn't give me like an artist vibe, because like you can put like the Beastie Boys are on the same level as like I don't know, like another like big band like Nirvana,
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't really do that with Eminem. Like you can't really compare them to different genres, like how you can add like other rappers,
Right. I agree with you. I just never really dug. I don't like his voice very much, and I just never really dug Eminem as a person. So there was a time where he was super popular, probably like early 2000s. Everybody liked him. Usually when everybody likes something, I don't like something.
Yeah. Like they weren't listening to Cool Keith.
No. Cool.
I was listening to Dr. Octagon the other day and I smoked a blunt. And it was a good record.
Better on the blunt?
Yep.
Nice. Yeah. Well, Dr. Octagon that guy's old school. Cool Keith goes way back too. Definitely.
Yeah, Cool Keith is some of the ultra egos.
Yeah. I don't know. Does he still do stuff? I don't pay attention anymore.
definitely.
Right. Yeah, hip hop kind of died. Oh, a lot of hip hop kind of died. Like good stuff.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, I don't know. Like even like the old school artists that are still good are kind of like they're not doing that much anymore. Well, they're old. A lot of them are old, you know. So like if you're in your 50s still rapping for a living.
Yeah.
What-
You like Memphis hip hop?
What's that? What's that?
You like Memphis rap?
I don't know enough of it. Do you?
Yeah, me and Makai do.
Okay. All right.
You know, like 3 6 Mafia?
Yeah, I know them. They've been around for a while. Yep.
Yeah, you know Project Pat?
Not offhand, no.
You know DJ Scream?
Nope.
Ask him about
After my time, I guess.
Have you ever listened to Metallica?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, you know, hip hop was that one thing I listened to, and some good early metal I listened to in the 80s too, and 90s.
That's good.
Yeah.
There's oh yeah. Our friend's asking, what do you think about the prequels for Star Wars?
They're not as good.
Yeah.
I think my thing about the prequels of Star Wars is I think they should have started the prequels already when Darth Vader was turning bad and was an adult. They could cut out the first one when he was a little kid, and maybe even part of the second one, and just make it really like about him turning dark. And I don't know, it seemed like a waste of time. What's that?
How did you feel about episode 3 though, Revenge of the Sith?
Yeah, that one's good. That was the best of the bunch, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel this way.
Yeah. Like none of them were terrible. Like they're not as bad as the Disney ones now, but like they were a downgrade from the original trilogy. You think so too?
What?
You think so too?
I think the sequels are honestly just as bad, if not worse, than the prequels sometimes.
Yeah, well, the sequels are the really bad. Now they started off kind of good with the first one, The Force Awakens. Like it was interesting, but basically they just retelling the story of the original. So it was like the only reason it was good is because they were just retelling that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to stop here again. Yeah, right?
Yep. Yep. It was none of them have been as good as match the originals, you know. I don't think they can. It was a time and a place. In my opinion, though, some people love the prequels, and I don't. You know, I'll watch them, but I don't really like the first one too much of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
What do you think about guns? Like, should we own them? Like, should we even care? Like, what should we do? Like right now in the current climate?
I think it's good to have it for protection. Yeah, I agree. I think it's you know, at least in America you can have one, and if you're not, you know, stupid people kill stupid people. I mean, stupid people kill people, not guns. So, you know, if you need one for protection, I mean, you never know. It's always good to have one. I mean, yeah.
Anyway, what's up, Loomis? Sorry, my friend was talking.
What was that? I missed that part.
What were we talking about? Our friend was talking. We couldn't hear you.
Oh, guns.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to have them, you know, if you need it, and in case something goes down and you need a gun. But you know, you just have to be smart with them. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think keep a pistol in your car, like if you get pulled over.
Well, I mean, it's your right. If you have the permits, they can't mess with you.
Yeah.
You know, at least you can do that in America. You can't do that in the UK. You can't do it on Australia. So, and look what the government did during COVID. During those times, they really pressed hard. Canada, you know. So, I suppose it is definitely it is a good thing to have one. I don't know. That's just I think it's all right. We can have whatever, because if we didn't have guns, it's like people think just guns cause violence. If someone's violent, they're going to use a knife or a rock or whatever. So it's like a hammer. It's like if someone wants to kill someone, they're going to do it anyway, if it's a whatever. And so people always blame guns for everything, right?
Yeah,
That's real.
it's true.
It's true.
True. Well, thank you, Loomis. I'm glad my conversation. Loomis,
Nope.
do you ever listen to ASAP Rocky?
I have, yeah.
What do you think of his stuff?
I like some of his stuff, but here's the thing: there's like 3 Aesop rappers or something, so it's kind of confusing to me, because there was a couple of different Aesops before that guy came out.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you like him?
Yeah, no, I like him a lot. He's one of my favorite rappers.
Yeah, he's good. He's good. Yep. Yeah. He's someone I can listen to for sure.
What's that? What did you say, Mr. Loomis?
Oh, I said he's someone I can listen to as well. Yeah.
Yeah, you should. Loomis, I got a question. What have you been up to for like fun recently? Like to chill out or like relax?
Not a lot. Not really recently. I'm working on a documentary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think,
I've been eating it more.
mostly poreless.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did you roll up a joint or blunt?
With Dad.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just been eating it. I think that's where I like it, is eating it right now. Give my lungs and throat a break. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Eating is the best because I like how it like builds up.
It's a body high too. Yeah.
Yeah, it keeps you high. Yeah, it keeps
Yep.
you high longer.
Right. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, like I buy these cookies and they're like ginger cookies.
Yeah.
And yeah, they'll kick in like in 45 minutes, but like they'll last like 3 hours.
Yeah, and then like the thing about edibles though, you got to be careful, because you could think, oh, it's not kicking in very strong, I'm going to eat another one, and then 2 hours later you're completely baked out of your mind. Yeah.
Alex did that a year ago. That was cool. So we're at Thanksgiving and he and his roommate stuffing. That had can of butter in it.
Uh-oh.
Tell them about how. Okay, you said I eat my plate. Normally, I didn't. Yeah, it wasn't that much. And then Hayden and Max, the only other 2 people that are eating it, were like, I'm done with mine. And they're like, you want this? And I'm like, shit, okay. So I had like basically like most of the can of butter. Yeah, I was gone, man. I went through past, present, and future.
Wow. Damn.
But I'm off the weed pill. I'm more of a, if I have anything, it would be nicotine. But I don't have. But I don't do a lot. Hey, you guys know a lot.
Yeah.
Think of that.
Nicotine?
Yeah.
It's not my choice of things to do, because I don't feel like there's any point to it other than just to blow smoke out. I don't know. I like cigars, but yeah, I've never been big into smoking, but I like to, yeah, I did like to smoke joints and stuff, but like I say, I'm giving myself a break at the moment for that. But teach their own, but nicotine never really was part of my trip, but fine if it's part of yours, no problem.
Ask them about Zen. What do you think of blunts?
Yeah, blunts are fun. What they say too. It's mostly blunts. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes up all that weed though.
Yeah, it burns a lot. Kind of harsh on your throat, but the thing about blunts is you get high in a really cool way. And the thing about the paper, the tobacco paper, they say that weed is like a feminine component, but when you put the tobacco with it, it's a masculine component. So it balances it out. So there is some good properties about smoking a blunt.
Yeah, I'm gonna smoke a blunt with my friend in the Marines over winter break.
Oh, you better hope he doesn't get pop for testing.
I know, but he said he's joking. And he says he doesn't give a fuck. He told me he wants to cash.
Well, okay. Well,
I'm not the first fellow. Anyway, what was I saying? Have you ever tried Zen before?
no. What's that?
Oh, dude, it's like a nicotine pouch that's like clean. It's not like tobacco.
No, I have not. No.
That there's no adverse effects for like taking it, other than like you can get addicted, obviously. But if you don't get addicted, it's pretty useful.
Makai in the chat says movies were better in the 80s than now. Definitely. I think so.
Who's in the chat?
Makai 2.0, 2.20.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. Definitely, movies were better than in the 80s and now, and 90s and now. Now it's like movies are terrible. Like, what do you even watch anymore? What's even interesting that's coming out? I don't even know.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
It's like, have you ever seen? You like Falling Down, right?
Yeah. It's a great movie.
That came out in the 90s, though, right?
That came out when?
In the 90s.
Yeah, about 95. Yeah.
That's a good movie, though. That's a good movie.
Classic.
And Idiocracy is a pretty good 2000s movie too.
Which one was it?
Idiocracy.
Oh, Idiocracy. Yeah, no, it was a good movie. It's a documentary. It's
yeah, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
I like the part where like the one guy he's like putting his couch on the other cheese.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Like, it's an accurate depiction of where we're going to stupidity. Yeah. I think that kids were better behaved in the 80s than now? A question in the chat. Do you think the kids were better behaved in the 80s than now? No. I think the kids were wilder in the 80s, and we got into more trouble because we didn't have like phones or internet or anything, so we were up to more mischief. But it's different. I think people are more debased now, but back then, like, people were like, there was more fights, and like people weren't scared. People weren't pussies back then. So I don't know, but yeah, kids were up to bad stuff in the 80s and especially the 90s. The 90s turned the heat up. That's what I felt like. Yeah. Yeah.
Did anyone in your high school smoke crack?
Yeah, they did. A few of them. They didn't make it very far, but yeah. Yep. Yeah.
What happened?
Who knows? They probably dead. I don't know.
He probably went down the drain.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Tenzing that's like that.
He smokes crack?
No, he's gonna smoke crack. He's done coke before.
Yeah. I don't feel like crack's around as much as it used to be. I feel like now people smoke meth or fentanyl.
Cracks are like bums in like Chicago.
Yeah. I don't hear about people smoking crack anymore. I hear about them like smoking meth or shooting up fentanyl. That's what everything is now, is fentanyl.
Yeah, like has Michael Murphy ever done ketamine?
I don't know. He's not alive to tell us anymore, but yeah, who knows? He was on the streets for many years. Michael Murphy. Good man in his day, but yeah. Yep. Well, guys, I might take the next call if I'm going to get a call. And if you guys want to call back, you certainly can. I'm just going to see if anybody else wants to call in. And then you guys, if I don't get anybody, just, call back. It's fine.
All right. Thank you, man.
Yeah. Good talking with you guys. Yeah. Gen it down. All right. Well, that was a bunch of guys in a car and lots of great questions. If anyone wants to call the show, it's the numbers on the bottom of the screen. 1937-783-7259. And I'll be on here for a little bit longer. If anyone wants to call into the show, probably round it out after a while. But yeah, if you've been always wanting to get a hold of Chen It Down and you want to get a voice in here, go ahead and give us a call. I know there's not too many of you in the chat anymore or viewing, but there was quite a few of you for a little bit there. But yeah, if you liked the last few episodes I've done, or haven't listened to them yet, last episode with Trusika, that was a good one. Do we just call in normally? Yeah, just call in. It's just a Skype number, so you can call in on that number. Yep, go for it. But yeah, the last episode with Trusika talking about sky watching and some of the crazy stuff that he's gotten on camera and he's seen. And just from over the years, me watching the skies at night, I've seen a lot of crazy stuff too. So it is worth listening to that episode. Some of the stuff he has seen, and since that episode, I've gotten some pretty crazy pictures now of some of the stuff I've seen in the sky. So yeah, definitely worth a try. And the episode before I did that was 250. And that was someone's asking, do I get charges per minute or something? No, you shouldn't at all, unless you're calling from international. I don't know how that works, but you can certainly call in if you like, and it should work fine. I don't think you'll get any charges unless you're calling international. If you're calling international, it is a Skype number. I don't really know, but if it's worth it to you, go for it. My international crowd is actually bigger than my American crowd, or just about. So yeah, anybody can call in. But yeah, the episode before last was 250, chanting down going green, and I really went over some of that stuff with just breaking it down, understanding this whole green movement is been hijacked and being used against you. So that's an important episode too, if you haven't checked that one out yet. 252, this is episode 253. So 252 is actually going to be released tomorrow. So in case you're wondering if I skipped ahead, I didn't actually. It's just that I haven't yet released 252. It's already ready to go, and I'll probably release it tomorrow. More or Friday, we'll see, being that this is Wednesday right now. But yeah, anybody can call in. It's the number's 1-937-783-7259. You're welcome to call in and chant it down. And if I don't hear from people in too much longer, Henry and all those guys, you can call back as well. But yeah. What was your favorite part of the 80s? Oh, well, let me think. I would have to say the early 80s were cooler than the later 80s. And of course, I was only a little kid, so it's coming from kind of a funny perspective in that way. But the early 80s were just totally original. The late 80s got really cheesy. I felt like after a while, like it's like they stretched the cheese too far. It got to where it was kind of like, I don't know. Watch Superman 4, and you can see that for yourself. It just got a little. It's like all the I don't know. All the people running society were high out of their minds on coke and coming up with bad ideas by the late 80s or something. But the early 80s was a real sweet spot in the 80s, I think, in my opinion. Early to mid 80s. Like once you got to about 86, it was still good, but it started to get a little bit cheesier and less cool. But in reality and in comparison to today, I would say that it actually is a lot cooler, even the late 80s. I mean, the early 90s are pretty cheesy too, but they had some cool stuff as well. Yeah. Well, yeah, you're welcome to call in, whoever you are. And I don't see any of my old school listeners in here today. But it'd be nice to hear from you guys too, if you're in the chat or if you can call in. I realize that Hawaii time is not always the greatest time to broadcast from because they get people from all over. Most interesting and greatest thing we've lost since the 80s. I think it's our creativity, and humility and simplicity. If those three things that I listed earlier, those things seem to be missing from our society a lot more. Um, is and our freedom too. Yeah, I might mildly concerned about international charges. Yeah. I don't know what charges you will get calling this number. I can't guarantee it'll be free if you're calling from outside the country. But love to hear from you. So call in if you like. But yeah, I'd say we've lost some things from the 80s for sure. Have we gained some things though? I think we've gained access to the world's knowledge. So we have the internet, so you can actually experience, like if you want to look up anything in the world, it's on the internet and you can learn. So back in the day you had to grab a specific book about a specific subject just to learn about it. Now, and you'd have to read it. You'd have to read, if not the whole thing, just to get the idea. Now everything's accessible. So there are some things we gained. However, how many people are using the internet that way? Probably not that many. I just don't know. Yeah, but it has become, overall, I think the world has become a little more complicated since the 80s, and I think it's become, a lot of people have become blinded, and they've allowed themselves to be taken. And again, the internet being is a double-edged sword, but it is their toy. It came from them. It came from DARPA. DARPA created it, and they want us on it, and they want us tracked, surveyed. So it's kind of the word net or web. It's like a trap. It's like they've caught us like fish in a pond. Like I always give the analogies of the Hawaiian fish ponds out here. How all the fish were let in that pond through these little gates, and they came in small, ate on all the algae. Oh, it's a fun place. And then they're so big and fat, they couldn't get out those same small gates. And then they were trapped in there and taken out. So you have to look at that too, But yeah, the world's not all gloom and doom. We can still have fun in the world. And I never promote that on the show, but I always just like people to be alert of what time we're in, the time that we're living in, where things are crazy. The heat is being turned up. We're in the century of psyops. We're in the time when things have become less innocent. And when you look at from now back to the 80s, there's been a massive shift in things. And of course, this world's always been changing. When people got to the 80s, they probably thought it was crazy, and some people thought it was insane then, that were from the old days, and they're looking at their good old days like, God, I wish it was 1945 or something. Probably not, because that was about World War II time. But so like I say, the golden age, at least in the Western culture, specifically America, because I just know, because I grew up in America, I would say would be from probably about the 50s on up till about 2020, or you could say on up till the end of the 90s, of when truly things were like pretty good. And I think the general sentiment out there is things aren't quite as good as they used to be, and getting worse. And so, I think people should be concerned about that. But yeah, if anyone wants to call in, please call in to chat it down. I'm just rambling here at this point. 1-937-783-7259. Love to hear from you. Anybody out there, feel free to call in, chime in, whatever. If you have questions, comments, ideas for the show, guests you'd like to see on this show, I'd love to hear that kind of feedback. Oh, we did have a call. Let's see. Nope. Try again. Well, if you want to call back, caller, go for it. We did have a call there. Is it 1+1? Yeah, the country code. Here we go. Oop. Try again. That was my fault. Try again, sir, or ma'am, or whoever you are. But yeah, it's working. So whatever you're doing there is working. Yeah, calling to chat it down. Love to hear from you guys out there in the world. And here we go. Hello.
Hello there.
Caller from country code 35. Yeah. You're on Chat It Down.
Yeah. Yes, I am. I am watching Chat It Down.
How's it go? Where are you from in the world?
The Nordics.
Oh, okay. Up in Sweden or Norway?
Yeah, around there.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, good sir.
Yeah. So you had some. Go for it. Sorry, cut you off there.
No. I was just wondering, what's something that irritates you most about the modern age, the 21st century? What are some things that are particularly like, dislike this or irritates you?
I think the overall lack of concern of the direction that humanity's going and the overall lack of freedom. I think one of the things is everything automated. I think that's a mistake. I think that we're going in a direction where we're relying on machines and technology versus our own intuitions and things that we should have, that are skill sets that we should be using. I think a lot of people are kind of giving that up to everything online and everything automated. And I mean, there's great things about that. Look, I'm doing this show, I'm talking to you, but at the same time, I think we have to watch where that's going and what hand is controlling it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because for me personally, sometimes I think about how, I've heard this also from other people, how we've kind of also lost small talk to a certain degree. Nowadays, a significant amount of people, they just, like, for example, you're on the metro, the bus, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
People just look at their phone, you know? You don't really talk to there's less small talk, there's less community.
I agree. There's less awareness in general. Like, you know, and I do it too. I get in, if I'm in a public area, I'm bored, I'll get into my phone and like look at something there just because I'm waiting in line or whatever. And I think you're right. We're losing small talk and connections in the physical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Of course, I am guilty of this as well. I do.
Yeah, we all are.
You like cars?
You know, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
You got a particular favorite car or truck from the 80s you like?
Well, I was just a kid, so it's hard to like to me the DeLorean was cool from Back to the Future, but when you think about it, like I don't think it was actually a very good car, but it was cool to looking car.
Right. It's an interesting design.
Right. Yeah, with those lift up doors. Now Teslas do that, but you know, I don't know. Just it was like the cool image of a car. I probably like Ferraris and Lamborghinis then too, but like now I couldn't care less. But back then I probably did. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. These days, I mean, I don't know. Like cars to me, like, yeah, they're a mode of transportation. But I never really get into them that much because I look at them as like a money trap, a lot of them. I mean, I'm totally cool with car shows and collector, you know, that thing you have in your garage that you fix up. That's cool. It's just not really my thing, but some people really love it and cool. That's fine, you know. But to me, like I've just seen like cars run over all my favorite animals, pets, and or if I'm walking somewhere and you know, and there's cars going by, it's annoying. So sometimes I actually like just being on foot sometimes, and you miss a lot when you drive places. But anyway, I'm going on a rant, but yeah, sir, I do like collector cars and cool like things from the past. Sure. Mm-hmm.
What do you think of electric cars?
I think they're not well. Look, I don't like exhaust and pollution, but I don't know if you listen to my show much or you just started listening to it. I'm not sure where you're at.
No, I'm a newer viewer.
All right, you might want to listen to some of my shows concerning the carbon scam and all that. So you might want to listen to episode 219, What Happened to Cobalt Blue Skies. But I feel like electric cars are giving us less freedom in a way. Like people in America like to do road trips. You got to charge your car somewhere. And it allows it to be tracked more. So I'm not really that in favor of electric cars myself, and the cobalt batteries that produce are just taken from the earth. It's rare earth, and it actually supports basically slave labor. So I think it's the fake green movement, and I just did two shows about that exactly, so you can listen to that too. But yeah, not big on electric cars really. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got a country you particularly dislike?
No.
Out of curiosity.
No. I've traveled a lot of places in the world, and I've only met great people all over. Yeah.
Favorite foreign country you've been to?
Jeez, that's tough. I really enjoyed Croatia. I also have enjoyed some of the South Pacific countries I've been to. Hey, I've enjoyed pretty much everywhere. I've never been to a place I didn't like, but I haven't yet traveled to a country like that. But see, again, I always meet good people. Most people are good people, and I always enjoy just seeing something new. So I guess I'm always in that mindset. I've never really hated a country, because a country to me is a government is different than the people. Like you go to any country, the people are cool. Usually it's the government that sucks. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Great examples of that would probably be Russia.
Right. Have you been in Russia?
No.
No.
Personally, I've never been.
No. Okay. Right. So you're in one of the Nordic countries, you said. Yeah.
Yes, I have.
All right. That must be getting cold about now.
Yeah. We've had snow for a good week now. It was around -12 for a little bit. And we're
Okay.
chilling around -2 Celsius.
All right. It's raining here in Hawaii, but it's still probably like 75 Fahrenheit, which is what's that about maybe like 23 Celsius roughly. Yeah. Somewhere like that.
Oh, you were right on. Just under 24.
Okay, great. Yeah, so it's
3.8889. So.
oh, okay, perfect. That was just a guess, but yeah, I think I know I've traveled enough, kind of know the general but temperature, but it's not cold, but for us it's cooler. Yeah. So you just started listening to the show?
Yeah, just very recent.
Okay, cool. Where'd you find it at? Just curious.
Don't know. I was just poking around.
Nice.
Billboards, poking around.
Yeah. Well, feel free to peruse through the archives. I do have, I don't know if you found me on a video channel or just a podcast player, but if you go deep in the archives, everything's relevant, even all the way back to 2013. So you can listen to the show way back, and a lot of things to learn, a lot of cool guests. And, it's hardcore. The show is a bit hardcore at times, but it just shows you that truth is hardcore. And, sometimes we got to take that journey. So it's all good. Yeah, exactly. A lot of people don't want to know about it, but it's worth it.
Is there a particular episode you quite like? Is one of your favorites to film, or you think has very interesting or hard information?
Well, there's a series of shows you might want to take on in the early archives called The System Tentacles, and it's probably about 30 different shows that break down the world that we live in. And another way to do that is go to my Rumble channel or Odyssey channels, and I have a live stream breaking that down in a simpler form. But either way, that'll take you down the rabbit hole of truth and kind of just like give a good basis for the show. So I always tell people to go back, and if you go to the website chanitdownradio.com, you can see the order of those shows. It's easier to go to the series of shows page and you'll see all of them in order, so you can listen in order. That's a good way to go down. That's a good way to start the show. Yeah.
All right. Well, fantastic.
Great.
It was nice chatting.
What was your name?
Ironically, my name is Henry, but it is spelled different compared to the Henry.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we've had Henry's this show. That's great. Well, good to meet you. Thanks for calling in. And next time I'll have a live stream calling again if you don't have too many charges on this call.
I'll see what the charges will.
Okay.
If there are any.
All right. I'll try to make it better for international people. I don't know how yet, but we'll figure it out.
All right. Fantastic.
All right, brother.
Have a great afternoon.
You too. Good to hear from you. All right. Take care. All right. All right. We get good callers on Chant It Down. That's great. So anybody else want to call in? You're welcome to call in to Chant It Down still. And the number's on the bottom of the screen, 1-937-783-7259. Good to hear from people all over the world. Chant It Down has no barriers. You know, we talk the same talk as long as you understand English anywhere on this planet. And love to take calls and talk and hear my listeners. You know, if any of the old schoolers are listening, like some of you from way back, such as Andre or Sam, you know, those are some of my, and Jeanette, and some of my original OG listeners. And maybe I know you're all in different time zones, but one of these times I'd like to hear from you guys as well. So, you know, all the people that have been here since basically 2013, you know. But yeah, anybody wants to call in to Chant It Down, you're welcome to. Henry, you guys want to call back, you're welcome to call in, whatever. I'll probably round it out at a 2-hour show. It's right now been on here for about almost 2 hours, but yeah, don't mind talking to more people. All good. If not, we'll round it out. So yeah, the 80s were a great decade, all in all. A lot of people say it was the best decade. I can only speak from experience from the 80s forward. I think the 70s are probably pretty cool too. You know, I've heard the joke about black people in America, if they had a time machine, you know, wait, where would you go back to? Oh yeah, probably about 1982. It's about as far back as you want to go. You know, it just depends on the person. But I've heard that before because, you know, it depends on, you know, but if you were white in America, the 50s were probably a really awesome time. And who knows? I mean, we get tainted by what the culture creators put out there and all the issues they have for us to focus on. When, you know, we're all just humans, and that's the thing. It's just that. But yeah, the decades of in a decade in another country might have been hell. Like you know, I mentioned Croatia. Well, awesome country, but if you were there in the 90s, they were in war, so probably wasn't their favorite decade. You know, so that's the thing. Is these are all a matter of opinion. It's all a matter of what we cling to as nostalgia. You know, I'm sure my kids look at their good old days as when they were brought up, and that's how it is. But the end of this discussion, the whole thing is how has civilization declined since the 80s? And we've kind of gone over that. And I think that it's probably not as good of a time for sure, especially since 2020. Everybody in the world can actually say that, you know. But yeah, anybody wants to call in, 1-937-783-7259. I'll take us out in just a little bit here, but still got some of you watching, and if you want to come chant it down, you know, feel free to call in. We got anybody still in the chat? Yeah. Well, what this show has been for some people is a way to relieve themselves from the crazy world. Even though you're hearing about the crazy world, it's like, oh yeah, you know, it's therapeutic for people, and people like that. I enjoy that too, because when I used to listen to podcasts before I did them, I wanted to be part of these conversations that I heard. I wanted to, because I had my piece, I had my journey, and I wanted to talk about this stuff too, and so it was always fun to talk to people that were on podcasts, and it was also, and then I decided, well, I'll do my own. So 2013 started Chant It Down, of course, and we had the 10th anniversary this year. That was a show a while back, and at the end of this year, I think I'm going to do a year in review. So we'll talk about the year in review. We got some more guests coming up. Actually, lots of guests coming up. So it's going to be a guest-filled show, probably just about to the end of the year. I might do another solo here and there. I don't really know. Coming up to the holiday season, a lot more people busy too. So I notice my podcast listenership always goes down every holiday season because people are busy doing their thing. But yeah, we're getting close here to closing it out, but I'll squeeze in any more callers if you want. So I'm here to get more callers if you like, or more chats if anybody wants to say anything else. Yeah, the 90s, I did a show on the 90s, and it wasn't really like this one. Yep, still got one or two people in the chat. That's good. Thanks, guys. I did a show on the 90s. It was episode 120. It was a little bit different, but it was about the destabilization agenda that has happened through it's happened through many decades, but it's been going more and more as we get, into this time period where, the next generation doesn't care about the things the generation before did. So they don't keep their principles, Hey, got more people. Well, keeps fluctuating with listenership here, or viewership, I should say. But yeah, if you want to call in, I'm going to close out soon. But don't mind hearing from you guys again. Henry out there, both Henrys, and Alexander and anybody else. We are. I'm going to be putting out a show in a few days. And I'm going to also, it's really raining outside now. Yeah, we're finally getting our rains here in Hawaii. It's coming in with a vengeance. And again, that has to do with this whole geoengineering that has been happening. We are in a place where the weather is being so tampered with that we either get one extreme or the other. We either get drought or we get a lot of rain. And that's what I was saying 2 episodes ago. Is Hawaii's in a drought, and now it's getting a whole lot of rain. And so, it is rainy season, and rain happens and all, but it never just comes in a happy medium. It's always either or, and that's how you can tell that they're tampering with the weather. And like I say, one of the shows that does that well is What Happened to Cobalt Blue Skies back in springtime. I did that show, 219. Well, guys, I think that was going to do it for today's show. I've talked for 2 hours, and it's great hearing from all you guys, and thanks for chanting it down. Thank you, guys, and you will eventually hear this show on my feed in about 2 weeks or so, or a week or so. So, yeah, this show is coming up, so, this will happen soon, and much love to all of you. Be a warrior, not a worrier. And keep on chanting down the system. Oh, and other things too. So if none of you if you don't follow me on social media, I don't do a lot, but there is Instagram, Chant It Down, Telegram, Chant It Down, and follow the videos on Odyssey or Rumble. Follow those, and you can see the show videos if you like watching podcasts. But if you like to just listen, Chant It Down on any podcast player out there. Much love, you guys. Chant it down. Be a warrior. I am out.